Ladies, gentlemen, and Haradrim of all ages, Season 2 is well underway for Diablo 4, and for those of us out there playing the Rogue, you may have the ever so common question of what is the strongest build for you to play? Not one that is situationally strong only in some places, because swapping builds can be an absolute pain. So what is just the overall best one? And, well, you may not be surprised to learn that it is, in fact, Twisting Blades. I know, but Season 2's best Twisting Blades build has, well, a bit of a twist, or at least mine does, so it changes things up just a little bit from what you might be used to. So today is all about the true peak of Twisting Blades in Season 2, and then in the next few builds we'll start branching off and go over to funkier stuff that isn't quite as strong but uses different playstyles. Starting off then we'll go over the skill points and where to spend them, then we'll talk about your specialization of choice, then we'll talk Legendaries and Uniques followed by general gearing practices. After that we'll go over our choice of Vampiric Powers to really make the build shine, and of course the Paragon setup to really round it off before ending with any tips that I have for playing this style of build. Starting off then, let's go into the skill tree itself, and of course we're going to be picking up Puncture, as well as Enhanced Puncture, and then also Fundamental Puncture. Yes, with us having more methods of applying Vulnerable this season, this basic skill isn't necessarily exclusively for that purpose, but it is also just the fastest attacking basic skill. It also applies slows, which are good for us, and is technically a marksman skill, which will come into play later on. Then of course we're going to be grabbing all 5 ranks of Twisting Blades over here, and any bonus ranks that you can get from gear are fantastic too. We also grab Enhanced Twisting Blades, as well as Improved Twisting Blades, which makes it daze enemies that you stab with it. The general idea of using this core skill is to stay mobile. Stick 2 or 3 of these into an enemy, then dash around to the other side of the pack. This lets the return damage of the blades get a load of extra use, which is what synergizes with the Blade Dancer aspect to do loads of damage around you. Then we're also going to be picking up 3 ranks of the Sturdy passive here, just for 12% damage reduction from close enemies, as most enemies will wind up being close when using this build. Then over in the Agility node cluster, we're going to be grabbing Dash as an active skill, as a source of emergency movement that also triggers the souls gathered from Vampiric Curse for a pop of damage. Then we're also going to be taking Enhanced Dash here, which gives you extra critical strike damage against enemies that are hit by Dash for a few seconds afterwards. Then also Discipline Dash, which will slow any enemies that you hit with Dash, instead dazing them if they are already slowed, which is very important. After that we're going to be grabbing some passives here, 3 ranks in Rapid Gambits for 1.5 second of cooldown reduction on your evade whenever you daze an enemy. This comes into play with Twisting Blades, with our Dash as well, and we also have the aspect of Shared Misery, which will give you a lucky hit chance to spread your daze just naturally once one enemy is affected. The idea of this is to give your evade a near negligible cooldown to accomplish multiple things that we'll be getting into later on. We then also take 1 rank of Trick Attacks here. When you crit a dazed enemy, they get knocked down. This is mostly useful for elites, which you can sort of chain knockdown if you get it right, or if we're activating our 1 rank here of Concussive for 4% bonus crit chance against an enemy after you knock them down. Then we're also going to be grabbing 3 ranks of Weapon Mastery as a passive 2. We are using daggers in Season 2 now, so the bonus that we get from this is actually bonus damage to healthy enemies, but that means that it should be easier to blow up smaller packs, so it is still worth having. Then moving on to the next cluster here, we're actually going to be taking Smoke Grenade, and that's the funky thing here. I got Smoke Grenade worked into one of my Twisting Blades builds last season, and it was actually really great, but there's actually far more benefit to it this season, to the point where I think that it is arguably the best use of this skill slot. Many people are already using Shadow Step, but the main reason that you use Shadow Step is for Unstoppable, which in Season 2 you can get from the Metamorphosis Vampiric Power on your evade, so instead I go full on in evade charges and evade cooldown reduction, and then Shadow Step becomes unnecessary, which allows you to instead take Smoke Grenade, which not only applies daze and an AoE to lower your evade cooldown further, but also gives you 25% multiplicative bonus damage on anything that is in its range with Enhanced Smoke Grenade. Then we also take Countering Smoke Grenade, which gives you a lucky hit chance to lower the cooldown of the skill as well, so you just wind up with a very frequently usable 25% damage increase that both gives you energy and reduces your evade cooldown. Then for passives here, we're of course going to be grabbing 3 ranks in Exploit here for bonus damage to both healthy and injured enemies. I have a couple of extra ranks from my amulet here. This isn't a bad one for extra ranks, but the ideal one for extra passive ranks is actually Malice for bonus damage to vulnerable enemies. Enemies will always be vulnerable, so this is just multiplicative bonus damage. After that, we get to our imbuements, and here we're going to be taking 5 ranks of Shadow Imbuement. The main purpose of this is for pack clearing and AoE, and we also take Enhanced Shadow Imbuement for bonus crit chance shots against injured enemies that have shadow imbuement on them, as well as mixed shadow imbuement here to make enemies affected by shadow imbuement take more non-physical damage from you, which most notably includes our 5 ranks of poison imbuement over here. And this, more than anything, is fantastic for single target or just larger enemies in general, especially when used second after shadow imbuement for the damage buff. Enhanced poison imbuement makes it last 1 second longer, and blended poison imbuement makes 75% stronger if you crit on a poison imbued attack. Then we also have a couple of passives here, 1 rank of Shadow Crash, which is mostly just as a gateway to get us 2 ranks in Consuming Shadows, which gives you 20 energy every time that an enemy dies to shadow damage, a large help to our energy gain in group killing scenarios. Then in our ultimate node cluster, we're going to exclusively be taking passives, 3 ranks of Innervation over here for 30% lucky hit chance to gain 8 energy, which is lovely with our high attack speed. Then 1 rank of Adrenaline Rush, but this is mostly just a gateway for 3 ranks of Haste for bonus movement speed when above 50% energy and bonus attack speed when below 50%. Then finally we have our key passive, and here we're going to be taking Close Quarters Combat. Damaging a close enemy with a Cutthroat or Marksman skill increases your attack speed by 10% for 8 seconds. If you have both attack speed bonuses active at the same time, you also get a multiplicative damage bonus equal to 40% of your damage against crowd-controlled enemies. For me, right now, that is an 80% increased damage multiplier, which is absolutely extremely solid, and because Puncture is a Marksman skill and Twisting Blades is a Cutthroat skill, you will have this bonus active just 100% of the time with the way that we played. With that covered then, let's talk about your specialization. If you're a little bit earlier on, Inner Sight is excellent for this, but once you have your resource upping legendaries and your Paragon board a bit more fleshed out, energy will no longer be an issue, and that's when combo points becomes the best by a very large margin. Just adding a ton of damage basically passively, as you will most often be swapping between Puncture and Twisting Blades occasionally anyways. With that covered, let's talk about our Legendaries and Uniques. First and foremost, on our 2-handed slot for double power, we have Edgemaster, just increasing all the damage that we do by up to 40% depending on our available resource, so we always aim to be at full resource when casting Twisting Blades, or at least close to it. Then on your Amulet for 50% bonus power, we have the Blade Dancer aspect, just adding a nice swirling damage aura around you after your Twisting Blades return that really stacks up nicely for damage, and it can apply even more imbuement effects while swirling too. Then for our resource legendaries, we have Ravenous for up to 70% faster energy regen after killing a vulnerable enemy, then also Umbral for energy regen after applying crowd control to an enemy. The difference between rolling this as a 2 and rolling it as a 4 is absolutely massive though, so aiming for a 4 roll on this is one of your highest priorities, and I wish I had one myself. Then for our final offensive slots, we've got Corruption down here for up to 40% increased imbuement potency on vulnerable enemies, which should always be active. And then for our other dagger, I actually am using the Condemnation unique for up to 40% bonus damage using skills with 3 combo points, and a 30% chance for basic skills to give you 3 combo points in one go, which is fantastically efficient. Then in our glove slot, we actually have a utility aspect, which is the aspect of Shared Misery. The idea being that this gives us a high chance of spreading all of our crowd control around, both activating Umbral more often for more energy, and also activating our evade cooldown resetting. For our boots, we have the Ghostwalker aspect for bonus move speed and the ability to walk through enemies when unstoppable and for 4 seconds afterwards. And then for our defensives, we have Might up here for a 20% damage reduction in general for up to 6 seconds after using a basic skill, then also Disobedience for up to 66% bonus total armor when you have it running at maximum stacks. Then our final slot is Legs, and I'm currently using Temerity as a unique, which is actually ridiculously effective with this build for survivability specifically, but the ideal best in slot legs are actually Tybalt's Will, which gives you both 50 resource regen and up to 40% multiplicative bonus damage while unstoppable and for 4 seconds afterwards, which is sort of where the build all comes together as we round into our Vampiric Powers. But first, let's quickly talk about what affixes to aim for on your gear in general. Bonus ranks to relevant skills are always top priority. You want attack speed, you want crit chance, cooldown reduction, energy cost reduction, things like that. Then defensively, you want to get stocked up a decent amount on your various elemental resistances, making sure to use gems and jewelry when necessary to accomplish this as well. You want a few rolls of bonus maximum life as well. You want bonus total armor percent for sure where you can, then just classic damage reductions really. As far as Vampiric Powers then, this is where it starts to get even more fun, because the first one that I want to talk about is Metamorphosis. This makes your evade turn you into a cloud of bats, which makes you unstoppable for 4 seconds, and that is the final piece of the big nasty combo of this build. We have tons of ways to daze enemies. Dazing enemies resets our evade cooldown. Evading with this makes Tybalt's Will give us up to 40% bonus damage for 8 seconds every time that we evade, and we can evade far more frequently than that too, which gives us near immunity to crowd control effects as a result of all of that. All in all, this combo is just absolutely nutty. We get so much bonus energy regen, so much bonus damage, so much bonus just effectiveness and ability to stay in the fight, but then we have our next two pieces pieces of this as well, which are Ravenous for a decent lucky hit chance to actually increase your attack speed by an amount equal to 40% of your total movement speed. In combat, we reach movement speed cap, which makes this an 80% attack speed bonus, which is just an insanely strong increase. Then we also combine that with the Undying power, which restores 3% of your health every time that you use any skill. Then you have an insane healing amount due to your attack speed because of this, and this is where the earlier unique swap that I mentioned comes in. Tybalt's Will is tons of damage just consistently, but if you are looking for survivability, then Temerity is absolutely nuts for this build in combination with these. Think of it this way: every time you attack, you heal for 3% health. If you attack while at full health in Temerity, it applies a barrier onto you that can stack up to 80% of your maximum life on a good roll. Combine that with the attack speed of Ravenous, and you just constantly have nearly double your health while actively refueling that barrier as well, just to say, hey, both of these uniques have their applications in this build, but most people will likely lean towards Tybalt's Will for the damage if they have the option. Then for your final two Vampiric Powers, we want Prey on the Weak, which gives you bonus damage to vulnerable enemies, as well as making any enemies that are affected by Vampiric Curse also be vulnerable at the same time. Then you also want a Cursed Touch, which gives you a lucky hit chance to apply Vampiric Curse, and also increases the damage of these souls generated from this mechanic quite a significant amount. This combination of powers and legendaries and skills creates something just absolutely absurdly beautiful, but of course it's not done yet because we also have the Paragon board. From the starting board, you want to progress up the right side here towards the glyph socket, snaking around to grab all the nearby intelligence and the other rare nodes on the board as well, as all of them are really great these days. Then we're going to be sticking the control glyph right in the middle here once you reach the socket for bonus damage to slowed, chilled, stunned, and frozen enemies, as well as just crowd control damage in general, which stacks really nicely with our key passive. Once you have all the important nodes here, you want to head up the left side out of the board and attach on the cheap shop board here with the legendary power on the top side. From here, you want to climb up the right side through the board to get to the glyph socket, also making sure that you grab all the strength nodes in the radius. Then once you get there, you want to put in the exploit glyph for a bunch of bonus damage to vulnerable enemies. Grab all the rare nodes in the radius as well, and then you want to head up the right side here to get to the legendary node itself, which gives you 5% increased damage for each nearby enemies that is crowd controlled up to a maximum of 25% maximum bonus. Very effective and one of our better legendary nodes too. Then you just want to get the nearby rare and magic nodes as well, wrap around to the top to get the damage reduction from elites on the corner as well, and don't connect the gate up here quite yet. Instead, go down here, grab this rare node over on the corner, and then you want to add the gateway over here to add the Tricks of the Trade board with the glyph socket in the top left corner. Take a direct path here and then veer up to the Havoc rare node in the corner, which is just extremely valuable. Then you want to get over to the glyph socket over here, of course, and put in the closer glyph. With this, you get a bunch of bonus damage on cutthroat skills, as well as reduced damage from nearby enemies when you're wielding a melee weapon. With that, you want to get all of the dexterity that you can within the area, as well as the rare nodes in here too, as they're quite valuable. And then you want to wrap down out of the bottom side to go to the bottom left corner and get the Brawler rare node for bonus damage to close enemies and damage reduction from them. Then just wrap around to get the legendary node in the middle, Tricks of the Trade. This makes your marksman skills give your cutthroat skills 25% increased damage, and also vice versa, which actually really works well with the way that we generally play this build, as it tends to be alternating puncture and twisting blades, just sort of back and forth. After that, you want to instead head at the top side of the board and stick on the No Witnesses Paragon board with the glyph socket in the bottom middle. Then simply head to the glyph socket here and stick in the Turf glyph for bonus damage against close targets, as well as damage reduction from close enemies as well. Pick up the nearby rare nodes and the easier to acquire strengthening area, just like I've done here. Then we're going to go back and stick on the Leyrana's Instinct board, actually at the top of this board all the way back here. We're going to have the glyph socket in the bottom left corner, and then you want to head immediately up, as our main priority in here is actually this cluster in the middle of attack speed increasing rare and magic nodes. That's the one that you really want. Once you have that, then head back down to the glyph socket over here and stick in the efficacy glyph for bonus to all rare nodes within range, but also, more importantly, 20% increased imbuement skill effects as an additional bonus, which we absolutely want to activate. So with your remaining points, what you want to do is get the rare nodes within the radius, as well as getting all of the intelligence within the radius to actually activate it, and that'll be the last of your points. That just about does it then for how to put the build itself together. So what about actually playing it? Well, to put it simply, Shadow Imbuement is for larger packs. Poison Imbuement is for priority targets. You can only have one active at a time, so make sure that you rotate them properly. Dash is your movement and escape tool, but can also apply crowd control for a bump of energy if necessary. Smoke Grenade is best used on priority targets for both bonus damage, Daze application, and then also the chance of resetting its own cooldown, and then Twisting Blades when you have nearly full energy for big damage, Puncture when you don't have high energy, but generally, even when you do have high energy, you will sort of want to alternate one back and forth between the two, both for the Paragon board bonus damage and also for the chance of condemnation, triggering a 3 combo point puncture quite frequently. Use your evade once every few seconds if you have Tybalt's Will, otherwise it's just a permanent source of unstoppable end movement so that crowd control can't really affect you anymore. And that just about does it then, everyone. A full breakdown of my proper endgame Twisting Blades rogue build for Season 2, which has had a number of interesting changes from Season 1 thanks to the new Vampiric Powers more than anything else, and it's quite a fun version of this build too. Of course, in the coming days and weeks I'll be messing around with more rogue builds and sharing them with you all, so if there's anything in particular you are interested in seeing, make sure to leave it in the comments down below. Like if you liked the video, subscribe with the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.